What are you gonna do today, Napoleon?
Whatever I feel like I want to do. Gosh!
When Napoleon Dynamite premiered in 2004, no one expected a quirky, low-budget indie set in small-town Idaho to become a pop culture phenomenon. With its deadpan humor, unforgettable one-liners, and bizarrely charming characters, the film exploded far beyond its humble origins. Suddenly, Vote for Pedro was everywhere. Napoleon's awkward dance moves became iconic, and a new kind of comedy, dry, weird, and oddly wholesome, was born. But behind the llamas, tetherball, and pocket tots lies an equally strange story of how this film was made and why it hit such a nerve. Here are 20 strange and funny facts about Napoleon Dynamite, plus a bonus fact that shows just how far its cult legacy has gone. Fact 1. Low-budget success. Napoleon Dynamite was made on a shoestring budget of just $400,000, minuscule even by indie standards at the time. That budget covered everything: locations in Preston, Idaho, basic equipment, costumes pulled from thrift shops, and the modest paychecks of its cast. Jon Heder, who played Napoleon, was initially paid only $1,000 for his starring role. Considering the film's later global success, that paycheck became a Hollywood cautionary tale about signing contracts too quickly. After the movie's explosion at Sundance and its massive box office haul, Heder renegotiated and eventually earned a fairer share through profit participation, but the gap between his original pay and the final numbers remains staggering. The film went on to gross over $46 million worldwide, which means it earned more than 100 times its production cost, a return on investment most major studios can only dream of. To put this in perspective, blockbuster comedies at the time often cost $30 to $50 million to produce and sometimes struggled to make a profit. By contrast, Napoleon Dynamite turned into one of the most profitable indie comedies of all time. Its success shocked Hollywood executives and reminded the industry that small, authentic films could resonate just as much, if not more, than heavily marketed studio projects. The film's box office also reshaped careers. Heder went from an unknown student at Brigham Young University to a household name almost overnight. Director Jared Hess suddenly had credibility in Hollywood and was courted for bigger projects. Even Fox Searchlight, the distributor, built part of its reputation as a home for quirky, indie-leaning comedies because of Napoleon Dynamite's runaway success. In short, this tiny film didn't just make money, it redefined what was possible for micro-budget cinema in the 2000s. Fact 2. Filmed in Preston, Idaho. Director Jared Hess chose to shoot Napoleon Dynamite in his hometown of Preston, Idaho, a decision that gave the film its unmistakable personality. Unlike many productions that dress up a town to fit a story, Hess leaned into Preston's real quirks. He recruited locals as extras, used real high school students for background scenes, and filmed at actual community locations like Preston High School, the thrift store, and the farm fields. This gave the movie a raw, unpolished feel that perfectly matched its awkward, deadpan humor. For fans, Preston quickly became more than just a backdrop. It was a character in its own right. The dusty roads, outdated houses, thrift store fashion, and low-tech vibe captured an America that felt oddly timeless, as if the town were suspended between decades. Audiences often debated whether the film was set in the 1980s, 1990s, or early 2000s, because Preston seemed untouched by modern trends. That out-of-time quality became part of the film's charm, making viewers feel like they were peeking into a parallel universe where moon boots and tetherball were still the height of cool. The town itself embraced its unexpected fame. After the movie's release, Preston began holding an annual Napoleon Dynamite Festival, where fans could play tetherball, enter a tater tot eating contest, or compete in look-alike competitions dressed as Napoleon, Kip, or Uncle Rico. The festival cemented Preston's place in pop culture, proving that the small-town authenticity that powered the film's humor also became a lasting point of pride for locals. By choosing to keep the production grounded in his hometown, Hess not only saved money on the budget but also created a comedy that felt lived in, personal, and real, qualities that helped elevate Napoleon Dynamite from a quirky Sundance entry to a cultural phenomenon. Fact 3. An unchoreographed dance. Jon Heder's climactic dance routine wasn't choreographed by a professional. Instead, Heder improvised the moves on the spot, blending awkward breakdance attempts with sheer enthusiasm. The scene became the film's most iconic moment, often compared to John Travolta's disco strut in Saturday Night Fever, only much stranger. Fact 4. Vote for Pedro became a phenomenon. The Vote for Pedro shirts weren't just props, they became a real-world fashion craze. Sold in malls and online, they turned into a pop culture statement, worn by fans who may not have even seen the movie. At its peak, the shirt was as recognizable as any blockbuster tie-in, proving indie films could spark mainstream trends. The shirts generated millions in merchandise sales and became a shorthand symbol for offbeat, nerdy cool. Even years later, the phrase remains one of the most enduring legacies of the film, instantly transporting fans back to Napoleon's awkward world.
Back in '82, I used to be able to throw a pigskin a quarter mile.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. Watch this.
Fact 5. The stake throwing scene was real. In one of the movie's most absurd moments, Uncle Rico hurls a stake right into Napoleon's face. There were no camera tricks. The actor, John Grease, really threw the stake, and Jon Heder took the hit. The first take nailed it so perfectly they didn't even need another. Heder later admitted the throw genuinely hurt, but the deadpan reaction sold the comedy so well that the crew burst out laughing behind the camera. The scene has since become one of the film's most quoted and gifted moments, perfectly capturing the mix of cruelty and awkward humor that defines Napoleon Dynamite. Fact 6. Jon Heder's tiny paycheck. Despite the film's later success, Jon Heder was reportedly paid only $1,000 for playing Napoleon Dynamite. At the time, he was a film student working with Jared Hess on a short version of the story. After the film's unexpected success, Heder renegotiated for royalties, but the contrast between his tiny paycheck and the $46 million box office remains one of Hollywood's most extreme pay disparities. Fact 7. Family-friendly content. Unlike many early 2000s comedies filled with raunchy jokes, Napoleon Dynamite stood out for its lack of profanity or sexual humor. Its awkward charm and PG tone made it surprisingly family-friendly, which helped it reach a wider audience. Teachers even screened it in schools, something almost unthinkable for most teen comedies of its time. Fact 8. Characters based on real people. Many characters were inspired by Jared Hess's own life. Napoleon himself was based on one of Hess's brothers, known for his awkward mannerisms and habit of carrying around tater tots. Kip was inspired by another brother who spent hours on early internet chat rooms. These personal touches gave the film its odd authenticity. It felt too specific not to be true. Fact 9. A cultural touchstone. For a generation of millennials, Napoleon Dynamite became a defining cultural reference. Lines like, "Gosh," "Lucky," and "Do the chickens have large talons?" were quoted endlessly in classrooms and workplaces. The film's awkward sincerity redefined what a high school comedy could be, paving the way for shows like Awkward and Flight of the Conchords. Fact 10. The second place trophy Easter egg. Sharp-eyed fans noticed a football trophy in the principal's office marked second place. This subtle background detail ties back to Uncle Rico's obsession with his failed football career. It's a blink-and-you'll-miss-it gag that deepens the world's quirky interconnectedness. Fact 11. An improvised wedding scene. The quirky post-credits wedding scene, where Kip marries LaFonda while her brother Lyle strums a love ballad, wasn't part of the original Sundance cut of Napoleon Dynamite. In fact, it was filmed later when Fox Searchlight picked up the movie for wider release. The studio wanted a bigger send-off for audiences, so Jared Hess and the cast came up with the epilogue almost on the fly. Much of the scene was improvised, including Kip's over-the-top entrance on horseback and Lyle's deadpan, awkwardly sincere singing. The addition turned out to be one of the film's most memorable oddities. At the time, post-credit scenes weren't nearly as common as they are today in Marvel movies, so it felt like a hidden gem for fans who stayed in their seats. It also gave Kip's transformation a fairy tale payoff. He not only found love online, but rode into marriage in full swagger, complete with LaFonda's unwavering devotion. For many viewers, the absurd sweetness of this epilogue tied the film's themes together. In Napoleon's world, even the strangest outsiders could find happiness. The scene became a cult favorite and is often cited as one of the funniest and weirdest wedding endings in movie history. Some fans even joke that it's the perfect metaphor for Napoleon Dynamite itself. Unexpected, awkward, low budget, but somehow completely unforgettable. Fact 12. Viral before viral was a thing. In 2004, Napoleon Dynamite spread through word of mouth and early internet hype, essentially going viral before social media made it commonplace. The film's trailers and quotes circulated online, and its awkward humor resonated with early meme culture. It became one of the first indie films to achieve success through online buzz. Fact 13. A feel-good movie in disguise. Despite its offbeat humor and sometimes cringe-worthy awkwardness, the film is ultimately uplifting. Napoleon finds confidence, Pedro wins the election, and even Kip finds love. That combination of strangeness and sweetness helped make it endlessly rewatchable. Fact 14. Grandma's injury was weirdly accurate. A Reddit fan once noted that Grandma breaking her coccyx felt too accurate to small-town life. It was the kind of oddly specific mishap that locals instantly recognized. This detail underscored how the movie exaggerated real life just enough to be hilarious, without straying too far from reality. Fact 15. 20th Anniversary Celebration. In June 2024, the film celebrated its 20th anniversary. Fans revisited the movie, shared old quotes online, and even organized screenings. The milestone highlighted just how deeply the film embedded itself into millennial nostalgia, reminding audiences that they were old enough to have seen it in theaters 2 decades earlier. Fact 16. The stake throw was tried twice. Director Jared Hess initially attempted the stake-throwing gag himself, but couldn't land the shot. John Grease, Uncle Rico, stepped in, and his first throw nailed Heder in the face. That accident became one of the funniest and most painful moments in the movie. Fact 17. The legendary liger. One of Napoleon's strangest doodles, a liger, which he describes as pretty much my favorite animal, wasn't a random joke. Director Jared Hess and Jon Heder both confirmed that the liger came straight from Hess's real-life sketchbooks. As a kid growing up in Idaho, Hess actually drew ligers, fascinated by the idea of crossbreeding exotic animals. The choice was a perfect example of how the film mined real-life oddities from Hess's childhood and turned them into comedy gold. Today, the liger is one of the movie's most quoted and memed details, and even helped introduce many fans to the fact that ligers are a real hybrid animal. Fact 18. A unique, awkward style. The movie's deadpan delivery, awkward silences, and offbeat pacing became its signature style. It didn't rely on traditional punchlines. Instead, the humor came from strange pauses, mundane details, and earnest delivery of ridiculous lines. This approach baffled some critics but gave the film its cult identity. Fact 19. Kip's transformation. Kip starts the movie as a soft-spoken, awkward figure who spends his days glued to online chat rooms, bragging about his cyber skills without much to show for it. He represents the early 2000s internet nerd stereotype, lonely, isolated, and endlessly fascinated with a digital world that seems cooler than his reality. But when he meets LaFonda, everything changes. By the film's end, Kip struts in shiny tracksuits, adopts a swaggering confidence, and even shifts into a pseudo-Detroit thug persona, complete with bling and bravado. This transformation is both absurd and endearing. On one hand, it's hilarious to watch a scrawny, computer-obsessed guy suddenly act like a smooth-talking player. On the other, it speaks to the film's larger theme, outsiders discovering confidence through their quirks and connections. Kip doesn't become normal. He doubles down on his weirdness, but with a new sense of pride. Actor Aaron Ruel leaned into the change by playing Kip's second-half persona completely straight, which made it even funnier. LaFonda's acceptance of Kip just as he is gives the storyline a sweet, almost fairy tale twist, making his odd metamorphosis feel strangely satisfying. Fact 20. A snapshot of the early 2000s. Though Napoleon Dynamite often feels like it exists in a timeless bubble, the film is actually a fascinating snapshot of early 2000s culture. The props and details anchor it in that moment. Flip phones, dial-up chat rooms, and low-rise jeans. The awkward thrift store fashion reflects both small-town Idaho's slower adoption of trends and the quirky mix of retro styles that define the early 2000s. What makes the movie especially surreal is how it blends eras. Napoleon's moon boots and Uncle Rico's van look like they belong in the late 70s or 80s, while Kip's obsession with online dating places the story squarely in the dawn of the internet age. This odd mashup gave the film a timeless yet dated aesthetic, making it hard to pin down exactly when it was set. Fans often debate whether the film is meant to take place in the 80s, 90s, or 2000s, and that ambiguity only adds to its charm. In hindsight, Napoleon Dynamite perfectly captured the awkward, transitional vibe of the early millennium, when analog culture and digital culture were colliding in everyday life. Bonus fact: the short-lived animated series. No, it did not win an Emmy. Fox did launch an animated Napoleon Dynamite series with the original cast returning as voices, including Jon Heder, Efren Ramirez, Tina Majorino, Aaron Ruel, John Grease, and Sandy Martin. It premiered on January 5, 2012 on Fox's Animation Domination lineup and ran only 6 episodes before Fox canceled it in May 2012. Despite the film's awards buzz everywhere, neither the movie in 2006 nor the 2012 series earned an Emmy for this property. The franchise did pick up other recognition, including MTV Movie Awards, and the soundtrack received a 2006 Grammy nomination for Best Compilation Soundtrack Album. From a $400,000 indie to a $46 million box office juggernaut, Napoleon Dynamite proved that awkward charm and authentic storytelling could capture the world's attention. Its impact was so big that Fox even tried to revive it with an animated series in 2012, bringing back the entire cast, even if it only lasted 6 episodes. This is Strange Flick Facts, where we uncover the bizarre truths behind your favorite films.